Hi, I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. Today I want to talk to you about getting started with your bees. What equipment do you need precisely and how much is it going to cost you? So if you were buying from online sources, you can probably get some of these things a little less expensive. What I strongly urge you to do is go to your local beekeeping supply store. A local beekeeping supply store can provide you with not only the equipment, but advice, local advice, which you won't be able to get from your online stores or big box stores, that sort of thing. Getting your stuff locally from a local supplier, you might pay a few dollars more, but you're going to get a much better service. You'll get good, same quality product, probably better, but you're also going to get that advice, and the advice is key to getting those bees through the winter and on to produce well, as is going to videos like this and learning from what you can online. Obviously, what I'm saying will be very relevant to people near me and a little less relevant to people further away, but in similar climates, and you have to pick and choose the things that are going to work best for you. So I'm just giving you an example of how I do it, and hopefully that will help you somewhat. But get your equipment from a local supplier. If you're buying this stuff from me, you can get started with bees with everything I think you need as a basic starter point for under $500. You have, first of all, your basic protective gear. Very important to have a veil, keep the bees off your face. One day you may do without it, but right now I would suggest keep the bees off your face, build up your confidence. You may go to something more expensive like a full bee suit, but I'm talking right now. I'm going to start with what is the least expensive way I would suggest getting in. Your veil and helmet and gloves. Keep your hands protected. Wear some good overalls and you will be protected from bee stings. Next most important thing are your tools. You're going to need a smoker and you want a hive tool. So those tools are your basic beekeeping equipment. Those are the things you will need. You'll want, for relatively northern climate, you'll want 2 deep supers as your basic hive unit. You'll want a feeder. There's a variety of different feeders. Simplest one is an entrance feeder. You get, with a kit like this, you will get the bottom board. In this case it's a screened bottom board, 2 deep supers, a cover, telescopic cover, and the inner cover. And inside each of these supers you're going to have frames and foundation. I recommend using black plastic foundation because it makes it much easier for the beginner to see those eggs, and plastic is going to be extremely durable. Just make sure whoever's supplying you with that foundation gives you a heavily coated plastic which has a heavy coat of beeswax on it. That is vital to making plastic foundation working well. So that is your basic hive unit. It'll take, your bees will start off in the first box, probably take about 5 weeks before you add the next box, during which time you're going to feed them. To keep the cost under $500 also, I would suggest that you get a package of bees, a 3-pound package of bees, which will typically cost you about $139 or so. You're getting them from me. So between all of these things, it's going to come in at just under $500. For about another $60, you can have what you may need if your bees do fairly well in their first year, and that would be a queen excluder and a medium super. I would not use a queen excluder right away. What you do is, first of all, when the bees have got 7 or 8 of these combs built in your second deep super, put your honey super on. Let them start to go up to start building that foundation. If you put a queen excluder on before you put this super on, What will tend to happen is the bees are reluctant to go through the queen excluder to go to empty foundation. They start getting overcrowded down here and it triggers swarming. So what I suggest you do is don't use a queen excluder to start with. Add your honey super, let them start to build up here, and once they've started to build, now what you can do, you've started drawing the comb on 3 or 4 combs, shake the bees out of this super into the supers below. Now you can put your queen excluder on. Make sure the queen is down here by shaking those bees down. And now if you put this super back on, the bees will go up to that built comb without any hindrance. They'll go through that queen excluder now. So for roughly another $60, you end up with a honey super and a queen excluder. And in most cases, that's going to probably be all the equipment that you need in your first year. Now, I've had hives which have gone on to 3 honey supers in their first year. So it is variable, depend on your location, depend on your weather and your management techniques. If you can do, I would be going for 2 colonies instead of 1. The reason being that if something goes wrong with one hive, you can very often fix it with something from the other hive. Question is it within your budget? You can get the 2 full-size hives with a honey super on each and a queen excluder on each. And if you're going to use packages at about $139, you're going to save a fair amount of money. That will get your 2 hives with your basic equipment going for just over $900. However, if your budget allows, if you go for a nucleus colony, in this case I'm suggesting Saskatraz bees, in that case it'll come in at just a bit over $1,000. It'll come to about $1,060 or so. There's a lot of advantages of going with a nuke. First of all, you will not have issues with queens that you might have with a package. Although with a package, it's only maybe 10% of the packages have issues with the queen subsequent to their installation. So it's still a low chance of a problem with the package. But with a nuke, it's almost 0 problems with the queen. What you can also get is, instead of frames in foundation in wooden frames, you can get the plastic frames with the plastic foundation. What I kind of like to do is mix them up. I like to get a combination of both. I like to put in both a combination of both plastic frames and wooden frames like this. Reason I like to do that is it gives me a little bit more room to play with in the hive. The plastic frames are very slightly narrow, about 1/8 of an inch narrower than the wooden frames. And by spacing them alternately, it gives me a little bit more playing room and maneuvering room inside the deep super. The other thing about a nuke is it's about 5 weeks more advanced than a package is. And that means they're built up and they're ready to go even during the spring or late summer, early summer honey flow, not to mention the fall honey flow. And so I've had plenty of nukes which have gone on to produce 100, 200 pounds of honey in their first year. So you may want more than 1 honey super, but just talking about getting started, if you start with 2 nukes and 2 hives and your basic protective equipment, it'll come to a bit over $1,000, $1,063 I believe it would be if you got that from me. In addition, when you're getting 2 hives and you're getting a kit of, say, 2 additional honey supers, I throw in one of these things, which is really, really useful. This is called an escape board. An escape board is basically a one-way door to get bees out of your honey super. So if you've got a super full of honey up here, but it's also got 10,000 bees in it, you don't want to be taking that into your house. So what I do is this. Take the lid off. When that super is full of honey, cover comes off, I will take the honey super off, and I'll take the queen excluder off usually at this point. So queen excluder comes off. Now the escape board. And the escape board, the way the escape board works is this. way the escape board works is this. The bees can go through this hole and they come out these points of the triangle and cannot find their way back up in there. So basically the bees go through the hole that way, but they cannot come back up into the hive. So we put the queen excluder on the honey on top of the brood chamber, put our super full of honey on top. At this point I do without the inner cover because there's an entrance in there. One thing we do not want to do when we're using an escape board is have any alternative way into the honey super. So basically the cover goes straight on. We make sure all the joints don't have cracks in them, there's no twig or propolis blocking and opening up a gap, because if there's a little gap in here, what can happen then is that bees can come in and rob that as the bees leave the honey super. So as long as it's set up right, within 24 hours this honey super would be emptied of bees. Now we can just take it off right away. You can also put 2 or even 3 honey supers on top of the bee escape and just add an extra day per super that you put on there to allow the bees to go down here, but they can't go back up. Now you can take the honey supers off for extraction and then put them back on if there's honey flow so that you can fill them up again. So that's it, very simply. Basic budgets for purchasing your first hives and your first bees. I hope you found this helpful. I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. See you next time.